preliminary questions for me?
Them started, get them.
Yeah, then he went into he just went into a bunch of them, so.
Mr. Carson,
Yes.
we're getting ready to start.
All right, thank you.
We get the hint.
You ready, Ms. Simpson? I'd like to call this speak to order of the Lancaster County Council Committee of the Whole here on, what is today, February the 15th, 2023. We'd like to welcome everyone here. We're scheduled up to 6 o'clock, but hopefully we'll get finished way before.
Hopefully.
With that, would you please rise and join Councilmember Billy Mosteller as he leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic.
A nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Let us pray. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for this beautiful day. Be with us, give us mindful minds as we are discussing the business of Lancaster County today. Help us work through our business and be with everyone as they're traveling home. Everybody gets safe travel. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. All right, I guess we'll have to have roll call. Let's move on down to approval of our agenda to have a motion.
So moved.
Motion from Ms. McGriff.
Second.
Second for Mr. Graham. Ms. Simpson, roll call.
Terry Graham,
Approved.
Charlene McGriff,
Approved.
Billy Mosteller,
Approve.
Jose Luis,
Approved.
Steve Parker,
Approved.
Alan Blackman,
Approve?
and Brian Carnes.
Approved.
All right, we've, by unanimous approval, our agenda is approved today. Let's move on down to citizens' comments. Please bear in mind, this is not a period of dialogue with council or question and answer period. This is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. Ask that you address your remarks to council as a body and not to any individual council member. Please speak into the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to address council. Your time will not start until you have provided your name and address. First up, we have Mr. John Hardy.
Good evening. John Hardy, 4012 Flagstone Drive, Lancaster 29720. It's good to see you all. I wanted to just chat for a moment, if I may, about the proposed change, 6A, discussion about amending the Unified Development Ordinance regarding Chapters 2 and 4 for MDR. And a couple of things that have occurred in the past couple of years with cost. And I'm really concerned about the lack of affordability should the proposed changes take effect. And it's already become very difficult for first-time home buyers to purchase homes in our fine county with an average sales price of over $460,000 at the last take that I looked at. And I urge you all to consider what these changes would do. The average construction costs have gone up 57% in the last 2 years, and that's just for the homes, the sticks, and the bricks. The average development costs have gone up 82% in the last 2 years. And should you need any, checks and balances on that, I can show that for you or to you. The 40-foot front setback, 10 foot beyond the front of the home, leads to more cookie cutter look. If you go into Huntersville right now and you go into Monteith or to Northbrook, you would see a more cookie cutter look. If you go into Westover, go into Westbrook, go into Davidson East in the town of Davidson, you would see that 10-foot setback leads for the homes to look very, very similar up and down the street. And I'm concerned that that's detrimental to the values of folks' homes. The proposed 20-foot separation between lot widths, I understand that folks believe that you can't tell the difference, or a home buyer can't tell the difference between a 10-foot separation of a 50-foot, a 60-foot, and a 70-foot lot, or 55, 65, 75, and that's false. I've entitled over 9,000 lots in our fine county, and they absolutely can tell the difference between a 10-foot difference from lot to lot. Not to mention, a builder and developer will have a price difference, so affordability is again affected. Also, one of the things that could be detrimental, if you think about the last three that I was involved in, Treetops, Harris Mill, and Roseland, we didn't put all the common open space in floodplain. And I would urge that that's something the planning department can help you work on, is to not put all the common open space in floodplain. And in addition, these are all private streets going forward. Please be careful that the 5% park is not a public park where the public is on HOA streets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Next, we have Mr. Hal Crenshaw.
Hal Crenshaw, 4420 Tabernacle Road, Lancaster, South Carolina. Just here to say that I know you're going to be presenting a presentation here on the billboard issue, and I'll be willing to answer. My son and myself will be willing to answer any questions y'all got. We have some comments, and if you have any discussions, we're here to answer your questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Crenshaw. Mr. Garrett, you don't want to say anything at this time? Okay. So that concludes our...
Man, he won't say.
Oh, you want to? Go ahead.
I was just going to say I second that, and I'm here to just reiterate what we've been trying to do this whole time, and look forward to y'all's presentations, and hopefully we can come to an agreement. Thank y'all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Crenshaw. All right, that concludes our citizens' comments. Let's move down to our discussion and action items. Discussion regarding amended Unified Development Ordinance to UDO regarding Chapter 2 and 4 related to standards for medium density residential, and I done lost my medium density residential district and cluster subdivision overlay district. Ms. Allison Hard, our interim planning director. Ms. Hard.
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you discussed, this is about chapters 2 and 4 from the Unified Development Ordinance. A little background on why we're here for this. Back in the summer and fall of 2022, there was discussion about growth management and starting an interim ordinance. In November, the Committee of the Whole met, and the Council re-engaged and amended the framework for going forward on this. And then at the December Committee of the Whole, there was further council discussion and official initiation of a UDO amendment, which staff has worked on since that time and bring some ideas to you with the Planning Commission's input as well. The goals for the amendment were to help reduce density, to right-size dimensional requirements for single-family lots, to reduce neighborhood parking issues, which also avoids having to develop an on-street parking ordinance, and to have more usable open space and more attractive streetscapes. These are all good goals for smart growth and for community development. We recognize that the future growth extends into the Cane Creek Sewer Basin, which is not currently available, but when that pipeline comes online, that there will be additional neighborhoods available for that. And we realize that there's a timeline for the UDO rewrite, but we bring this to you as an amendment potential. For the MDR district changes, it increases the minimum lot size to 12,000 square feet. 12,000 square feet is approximately 28% of an acre. This addresses your front setback changes, and it is suggested by workshop during UDO rewrite. Currently, we have a 10,000 square foot existing minimum lot size. 12,000 takes you up just a bit and provides for a little bit more space for the house and the family to breathe on the lot. Increasing the front setbacks for garages to 40 feet instead of 30 feet gives space for the cars to park on their private property. I can tell you from my personal experience in other environments, if you don't address that, that can be a real challenge. There's a neighborhood that I can point you to in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, that I was a planner during that time, and when we wrote the code, we wrote it for flexibility on bringing the house up to the street, but we didn't add in a separation for the garage. And so there are houses built with a 3-foot separation between the garage door and the sidewalk, which means that people will park sideways on top of your sidewalk. So the Planning Commission initiated a amendment at that time to require at least a 20-foot setback between the garage and the front property line. Here in Lancaster County, my understanding is that some of the streets are privately owned, so having a 40-foot setback allows for that width of the street, as well as the good setback from the paved area to allow for cars to park on their own property. Some people, when we've talked about it in the past, said we've got parking in the garages. That's where our garages meet our parking requirements, but in reality, a lot of people use their garage for storage. Some of them will use it for I don't want to get specific, but for a cave, for a he-man or she-man cave, she-shed, whatever they want to call it. They may use it as indoor-outdoor recreational space as well, and just don't use it for parking. In addition, if they have an oversized vehicle and it's an undersized garage, then there's a hardship there. So having the space available for the cars to park on their own property, on their own driveway, helps get them off the street and creates an open space for through traffic and for emergency services vehicles to not have to dip and dodge cars parked on the side of the road. The 40-foot setback does not apply to the front of the home. This 40-foot setback would only apply to the garage face. Now, the house could have a 40-foot setback. That's their choice, but they have a minimum of 30 feet. So this would push the garage back away from the face, which is a trend that is going on in a lot of communities, in particular because there's so many communities where the garage is the first thing you see. They're called in planning circles snout houses, where all you see is the garage in the front and you don't see a door. It hides the open space. It doesn't help people have eyes on the street to have a vision for safety in their community. So it is something that a lot of communities are moving toward, putting the garage behind the front of the house. And a photo example of this would be on the next slide if the clicker would cooperate with me. Did I accidentally push something? We're a little frozen. There we are. So this is the kind of setback that would allow the garage, or allow the house to be in front of the garage. Then we also changed the density in this from 2 dwelling units per acre, down from 2.5. Staff has not been able to identify a single development that has met the 2.5 acres per, or dwelling units per acre after all is said and done with the design of the streets, the sidewalks, the stormwater, the open space, and the like. And then the similar changes were made to density and open space calculations in the Conservation Overlay District that comes up a little later in our discussion. So I will go through this a little quickly because version 1 that we brought to...
Can we address one at a time?
Sure.
All right, before, I kind of got 2 hats here. I own MDR property. I also represent my council in my district, and I want to see, it's juggling, but mine is going to be based on affordability and what can be built in my district or in Lancaster. If this is passed, there will be no more single-family housing built. First of all, MDR is in areas that have been identified in comp plans where there is adequate, there's sewer, there are roads. That's where MDR, and standard is 2.5 per acre. But as you mentioned, with the existing regulations, you can't even get 2 per acre. And I mentioned something about, well, we need to make regulations more realistic. I thought they might reduce the open space and make it where you could get 2.5. But what has been created is when you go from 10,000 to 12,000, that is 4,000 square foot per 43,000 acre lot. Then you got a little side note in here. They're increasing the open space on a major subdivision, which is 10 lots or more, which is additional 5%, which you are increasing the requirement of 6,178 square feet out of that acre. So you're reducing the footprint that a developer can use to build housing, and you're actually going down to subdivisions that would be closer to 1.3 per acre. And if you can show me a drawing of something that you get more than 1.3 per acre with all the roads, the stormwater, the open space, the park space, it just doesn't work. Just the 2 lots at 12,000, 10,890 for open space, 2,178 for park space comes up to 37,068 square feet. That does not take into consideration any roads or stormwater. This is the death of single-family housing as we know it. And if that's the route we want to go, any proposals you will see down the road will be a lot more dense. That's my 2 cents.
That's your 2 cents. Are you talking as a developer or as a landowner? That's all I want to know.
Let me tell you, we see all these developments in Indian land. And you name a development that's been built in Lancaster in the last 15 years. We did some in 06 and 07 in McDonald Green School District. There's one going up on Linwood Drive. I don't know if you know where Linwood Drive is.
I know where it is.
All right, go down there past Linwood Circle. This is some of the roughest area that's not in the city. There is a 46-acre tract right now that is being cleared off. That will be the first subdivision built in the Brooklyn Springs School District since the late 1970s. That's where our affordable housing is going to come from. And if you have these we're not going to get $1 million houses down here. I mean, that's fine. And it's just, that's you can talk to developers. I'm not a developer. I'm a property owner.
But all these clusters, when we talk about cluster development, we are talking about 67. I know, and you're talking about MDR, and I don't have a particular problem with MDR. What I have a problem with MDR is the automatic cluster overlay. That's my issue.
Cluster is not by right.
Well, it's pretty much by right in MDR, Steve.
If 4 people vote for it.
Oh, it's not. If we rezone something to MDR, this is where the issue I have. I don't have a problem with MDR. The problem I have is it's eligible for cluster development, and cluster development, in my opinion, is not what we want in Lancaster County, whether it is in the south end or the north end. MDR is not the issue. It's the cluster development that goes with the MDR.
Just let me speak with my little bit of knowledge on construction and building. And my position is that we've got to make sure that we keep affordable housing, the standards available for affordable housing. As Steve said, we can't afford $1 million houses in this area, nor $500,000 houses. You're just not going to find that here. They may be coming over by the river chasing that area, but we know where we're at when it comes to housing, affordable housing. We don't have it, we need it, and whatever regulations or changes we need to make need to reflect that.
What has happened in Lancaster, because Indian land has grown so much, Lancaster used to not be considered Charlotte market. Charlotte's here. And people, with the pandemic, I've got several articles that were sent to me. People are moving out of the cities. They are moving up to 50 miles away. And what has happened, because prices have went up so much, I just had a Zillow pop up on my phone on 6th Street. I don't know if you know where the Mill Hill.
That's my district.
That 2 years ago, if you had told me somebody was going to rebuild a house down there, they're crazy. But these aren't spot places. They're all over. I don't know about Indian Land. I don't think it happens because most everything's due. But subdivisions like Smoke Rise that was built in the 70s. Anytime a house comes vacant, if it's got a decent structure, they're re-roofing them. They're putting new siding on them. They're going through them and they're rehabbing them. And that's where the affordable houses, whatever will be affordable, because there's not going to be no $100,000 houses no more. I mean, it's just it's not. And if you make it where it won't work at all, there's no more sites in Indian Land. I mean, you can look on here. I found there was 3. There's 116 acres on Marvin Road, and like I think I told 1 or 2 of you, if you think somebody's going to apply for 2 units an acre on Marvin Road on property that's probably worth $150,000 an acre, you're wrong. The one other site up there is Regent's golf course. That's not developable. There was a small tract, and then 2 others. That's all to zone MDR. And plus, the last 5 developments, the council has turned them down. You don't need no moratorium in Indian Land. Development up there is over for single family right now.
I know, but again, my problem is going to be if we rezone LDR to MDR, it's eligible for this high density.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of those requests.
I mean, they're going to come through, and that's my main argument is I know there's going to be MDR. My objection is the way that the density is calculated on the gross acreage, and my experience in cluster is that they take the buildable land and the useless land is open space, which I think that needs to be addressed. And also the biggest, in my opinion, we should be addressing the buffers and the large trees and destroying the nature and the character of the countryside.
All right.
I'm going to add something to that. So I think when we talk about the impacts to Indian Land, it's not necessarily the areas in Indian Land that are still developable today. I think as we develop further south into the county, the impacts are still going to be on 521. The traffic impact's still going to be there. We're looking at significant commercial developments that is going to be before us on whether we're going to approve that. All those folks that we're going to be approving increased density further south will be impacting Indian Land. So it's not as clear cut as just saying, it's nothing else is going to happen in Indian Land. All of those things are going to impact Indian Land because most of those folks are going to be coming from that area and to that area. So I don't see necessarily a concern with these minor changes. I see what you're saying, Steve, about how we have, a reduction in the total overall development cost, but I don't think it's the end of single-family development. I think developers are smart. I think developers will continue to figure out ways to do development. They're doing it in Marvin. They're doing it in Union County. This is a way to do exactly what we have told the people that we are interested in doing, and I think this is reasonable and smart.
Anyone have any questions?
You know what I don't want us to do, and whatever decision we make, because we know we're in a position trying to deal with the whole county when the whole county is so different. But what I don't want us to do is whatever decision we make will impact growth in the areas south of us that need the growth. That's what I don't want to do.
It's really going to come back to the thing that we've talked about, the quality of growth and what we want to see. I mean, that's what we're really discussing here.
Mr. Blackman, Mr. Carnes. Oh, okay, I want to see if they have any comments on this.
Well, I'll start off by saying I can't see the spreadsheet and all the details that are in our presentation. And so that, unfortunately, has got me at a disadvantage right now. But I think one thing, as we all talk about all these issues at the high level, we need to get more specific and say, if we don't want what's being proposed and we don't want what we have, then somebody throw out a specific idea of what it is that we want. And I've got to truly agree with Councilwoman McGriff that we've got to look at this county as three separate developable areas and make sure that what we do for the lower part doesn't impact negatively the northern part or the central part of our county. So I just want us to see more specifically as to if this isn't working, then what do we want to work?
That's what we were told was going to happen in our UDO. It would be three parts of the county, but none of that in the first the first module. I didn't see any of that. It looked like the old UDO to me.
Right.
I tell you, it's going to have to be something that reflects the three different areas of the county. There's no way around it.
If you don't grow, you die. And I grew up here in the 60s and 70s, great place. They used to come from Van Wyck to Lancaster High School because Indian land wasn't good enough. You believe that?
No, at one point, the school board was going to close down Indian land and bus everybody to Lancaster.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Someone from Van Wyck.
That was a big to-do.
But you know,
I was on the school board. Oh, you're talking about when I wasn't born.
But, Lancaster, the city of Lancaster after Springs closed is an article in Fortune magazine or something. The city of Lancaster was designated the most at-risk city in the country. And Lancaster has come a long ways in the city, in the county, and I want to see it keep going. We got enough dollar stores. We might not get the big box up there, but when you do, you got to allow some new developments in the old ones. We have our commercial corridors. You got 521 North. You got the bypass. You got South 200, which is pretty much declined out where the old Piggly Wiggly and all is. But with stuff at Edgewater, and if you get several new developments on the south in the town, hey, we got a Pizza Hut over there in the shopping center. You will see some better businesses because it's all based on demographics and income levels and all. And we've got a couple of districts of census districts that are very low that has hurt us.
Let me ask Ms. Hardin a question that she may have come across in her working and planning in different areas. The difference in our county, Indian Land, Central, and South. And the fact that we've got to come up with something that's going to work in each one of those locations. How do we go about that? Because, as I said many times, what happens in Indian Land can't happen in Kershaw. And Lancaster is so different. The central area is so different from both. So we're going to have to be very creative in what we put together that's going to work for our whole county.
Yes, ma'am. Zoning does that. You can create different zones for different areas based on the comprehensive plan's recommendations.
The only thing I'll add to is the city, I think, is going to be where we see a lot of our affordable housing going. Right now, in talking with the city, we've got 3 or 4 different projects that have been annexed into the city recently that are going to develop under their kind of cluster or smaller lot ordinances. So I think from a affordability, you're going to see a lot of that kind of be pushed into the incorporated areas, or in the case of Van Wyck, kind of the opposite happening of they don't want the development. So a lot of incorporation, not to get into an incorporation topic, but as far as separating different standards and things like that, a lot of times that's done via incorporations in different areas. So.
But the city of Lancaster is so small, it's already condensed. I can't see too many more developments coming into the city of Lancaster unless a lot of the, let me finish, unless a lot of the areas are torn down. Now, we've got some areas we can build, but it's some areas on the outside of the city where we got a lot of space for developments.
Yeah, we're getting back to the setbacks, 40-foot setbacks or whatever, we do have to look at this, as I've said before, that you wouldn't hear, in some of the neighborhoods, especially in Indian Land. You can ride through there in late afternoons or weekends or something, and they park on both sides of the street, and my truck will go through it, but a fire truck or an ambulance will not. It's too wide. So that really concerns me as far as public safety, a house on fire or somebody having a heart attack. That's my concerns with this setbacks, that we got to do something, but these people parking in the streets, they can't get that. But if you it's a husband and a wife got a car and they got 2 kids that drive and they got 2 places for a parking place in their driveway, where are they going to park? They're going to park on the street. So that's what's happening. So we got to do something about it. Regardless of what we do, we got to address that, because we're going to have a serious issue that's going to come back and bite us in the butt.
Okay, let me address the city growing. The growth around the city of Lancaster is based on sewer. If it's got city sewer, you'll be annexed, or you'll pay. They won't let you hook on. And that opportunity for growth, as you can see, is up 521. They've had several. It won't go much farther because you have county sewer, and then no developments won't go in. Also, one of these big 200-acre tracts here, about 120 acres of it is out on West Meeting Street, behind Partridge Hills.
It's not in the city at this point.
No, it's not in the city, but that's city water and sewer. And at some point down the road, if there ever is a development there, it would have to come out on the bypass, and it would take cooperation for property owners. But that would probably end up being some kind of mixed use. That's probably 10 years down the road.
I know it's got to be annexed in, but it's going to have to be annexed in because they're thinking about my area being. I don't want to be in the city.
Won't be,
so some of us don't want to be in the city, so we're going to fight that all we can. But what I'm saying is, at this point, it's not enough buildable spaces in the city.
Well, actually, I'd like to add that the sewer district and the city are in talks right now about what their service areas are going to be, and so they're actually identifying ultimately where will the city sewer water remain.
They've identified my area, and I'm going to fight it.
And so those conversations, are closer than I think people understand. So they are trying to work cooperatively to say the water sewer district will have from such and such location up. And so there is, from their initial conversation, there is still significant areas around the city that will fall to be annexed, served by the city water and sewer. So there's still some significant opportunities.
There's several tracks. It's limited.
Councilman Carnes would like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Carnes.
I may be a little behind the subject, but on the cluster subdivision, I think for myself, if we're going to consider it, I would say anything south of Highway 5 that we consider them for, anything north of Highway 5 that we just take it off the table.
Repeat that again, Brian, please.
I said for cluster subdivisions, south of Highway 5, we leave it as an option. North of Highway 5, we take it off the table and don't offer it north of Highway 5 anymore.
I know we can't vote here or anything, but as county staff looking for direction. Is that legal? Is that got to be based on fire districts, zoning districts? It can be based on roads?
We'll research that, and yeah, we'll take that as a takeaway to research that.
Is that something that they would like to look at? I mean, just.
Well, yeah, I'm all for that. The only cautionary note I'm going to tell you is y'all have seen what's happened in Indian land. And if you're not very careful, all that stuff is going to repeat itself south of 5. So, I mean, if you want the same type of development that you got in Indian land, it's going to happen south of 5. And I earnestly believe that the city of Lancaster is going to grow, and they may have laxer standards than the county, and therefore the people will annex into the city because they got lower standards. That is what happened in Fort Mill. York County had a bigger, much tighter thing, I believe, and so they all annexed into Fort Mill because they could build more houses.
That's what I was going to ask you, Steve. Have we looked at the city standards? Are they comparable with ours? The standards, the building.
The city is trying to. They're trying to hire a planning director, and they have some what they call R6, which is 6,000 square foot, but most of it is R10, which are like 10,000 square foot. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
This data says some ideas.
Yes, and they also have a cluster type ordinance, which allows some smaller lots. So the 2 or 3 areas that I know have been annexed in recently are going to use smaller lot standards than what they would be allowed to use in the county, which is part of why they annexed it.
Smaller than the counties. Is that a clear? Okay. Yeah, that follows a pattern.
Too off kilter with most city-style urban development, so you have smaller lots than cities, larger in counties, generally speaking.
It's not on this agenda, and I don't really feel comfortable talking about it, but I think we're going to be looking at the RX or whatever. When are we looking at that, next month or two? RX, the institution, not the institutional, the mixed-use districts. MX districts. We need to look at that because to keep Lancaster 521 from what you're saying happening, most of the sites on 521 are big sites.
They are big sites.
And they need to be master planned or whatever, and that's something in the UDO we got.
I think in the new UDO there's going to be a HDR, which is high density residential, and that's what I think we should be going to rather than trying to put cluster in MDR. I mean, I think that's what I recognize should be, and there is a need for high density residential, but it should be its separate category rather than being mixed into MDR. We still need to retain that 2 acre or 2 houses per acre or whatever, that classification, and not automatically let it go into 6 or 7 houses per acre.
Yeah, that conversation will be coming up next month as part of the updated UDO process. Do you want to finish your presentation?
I apologize, Ms. Harden.
No apology necessary, sir, but I do want to make a couple of points. I listened to your conversation very closely, and I have some answers, not all answers. The open space proposal is still at 5%, which is currently what's there now, so there is no increase in the open space required for the housing.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it is? I apologize. Oh, you're...
Yeah, it is.
My wrong. 5% park space. Okay. Thank you. That's fine. Clarifying, I'm wrong. Don't tell my husband I said that. So the cluster division option is something that is used nationwide for allowing smaller lot sizes, which leads to more affordable housing. Cluster divisions are typically put in place in order to protect natural resources. So as Councilman Graham said, he would like to preserve trees and open forest land and sensitive areas. That's exactly what a cluster development should do. If it doesn't, then we can add in some other requirements to include things like a count of trees or larger trees, or make sure that the area is covered.
Yeah, that's not happening right now.
Okay, well, that can happen. Be happy to help you with that.
I understand that. I mean, that's why I believe Chairman Harper supported cluster development on the Planning Commission, because he thought that that's what it was going to do, but that's not what it did.
And cluster development is also a bonus when you're looking at a community rating system ranking. I don't know yet if the county participates, but there is a program by which folks that have property in the flood zone can get discounts based on the higher standards that the county provides and enforces based on floodplain management. Where I came from, the city of Myrtle Beach, the residents themselves, not the city, but the residents saved $890,000 a year because of the rules that the city had put into play. So that's just an example of where that could have a double duty of providing open space and storage for flooding. And then the blending of lots, the proposal calls for, instead of doing a 70, 60, and a 50-foot lot measurement, that you have a minimum 70-foot wide lot. But for 49% of the lots that you create, you can go down as far as 50. So there's not 3 steps. There's a blending of steps. And when you're allowed to have lower or different widths of lots within the subdivision together, you get a better blend of housing prices, and you get neighborhoods that are a little bit more sustainable because they're not all one type of house and not all one marketplace. There is a neighborhood outside of Charleston called Ion. It's a very famous neighborhood in the Low Country because it has $800,000 houses next to $150,000 houses. And because of the architecture standards that went through and the way that the lots were designed, it didn't feel that way. So there are ways to use the proposal for the cluster subdivision to create a more dynamic neighborhood and to provide more affordability, because only in the cluster neighborhood can you get down below the 10,000 square feet per lot area. There are some proposals in this amendment that takes away a little bit of the developable area, because instead of allowing all of the open space to count toward the density, it cuts it off at half. So that someone doesn't have, say, for instance, 100 acres and 60 acres of it being wetlands, and then get all the benefit of that developable area crammed into 40 acres. So it does take into account that condition, and that's a good compromise between that, because you really don't want people in the wetlands with their homes. You don't want them on lands and soils that are not developable in the first place. It makes for long-term challenges to those neighborhoods, which inevitably those folks will come back to the county and say, why did this happen? So just those are some of my thoughts on that. I apologize if I went too long. I can go to the next slide if you'd like.
The only thing when you get in, you're going to have a 50-foot wide lot that's going to have 9,500 square feet. That means it's 50 by 185 or 190.
But no, the 50-foot lot doesn't have to count as the 9,000 square feet. It can go down as low as 5,000 square feet because it can be one of the 49% that are smaller. 50% of your lots have to have the 70-foot width, and then the rest can be smaller.
No, it's cluster shall the minimum lot area in a dwelling unit cluster subdivision shall be 9,500. I don't know what version I'm looking at. That's all right, which I'm looking at the wrong one.
Yeah, so there's 2 versions. She'll run through them, but version 1, which was kind of the original staff interpretation of what council was looking for, lets you go down to a lot size of 7,000 square feet. Right now it's 5,000, so it's gone up just a little bit, but you have 50-foot wide lots instead of a minimum of 55-foot wide lots, which is what exists right now. Then in version 2, which you'll get to, it's written in a interesting way, but basically it says that you have to have 70-foot wide, 9,500 square foot lots, but that's only 50% of your lot, and so the other 50% can be less than that and go down to the 5,000 square feet, or the 7,000 square feet and 50-foot wide. So.
Have I told you how much I respect my staff?
And that goes down to 2 units per acre.
Which is exactly what was proposed, yeah.
There won't be no clusters. It'd make no sense for anybody to do it.
Okay. Increasing the lot size to 7,000. This is an example of 5,000 square foot lots on Kahana River Road. This is what a subdivision looks like with 5,000 square foot lots. You can see that the houses are pretty close together. With a 7,500 square foot lot, this is Hardy Drive in Rock Hill. You can see that there's a little bit more space there. Folks have a little bit bigger backyard.
When were those houses built? What year?
Not sure, sir. This was put together before I got here. I've been here a week and a half now. A week and a half. But either way, that is still an example of a 7,500 square foot lot, regardless of the year they're built. The two lot types that we have with a 20-foot gap would be the 50 to 70 foot, but the Planning Commission recommended a sliding scale, increasing the front setbacks to garage as we discussed, and changing the base density to 2.0 dwelling units per acre rather than 2.5. That was version 1. Version 2 is the one that Planning Commission recommends, which is the 70-foot minimum lot width. 49% of your lots are allowed to go lower than that. So half of your lots have to be at least 70 foot wide and 9,500 square feet in area. Then 49% of your lots can be 7,000 square feet, which is a much smaller lot size, which leads hopefully to a lower price point, and then 50 foot wide access points at the street. That allows for more flexibility in design. For the open space and block face, it limits the acreage, like I said, to 50% within the required open space and preservation calculation, meaning that if you have 50 acres and 25 of those acres are sensitive lands, instead of getting the full density rights for that, you would get half of that towards your density calculation. And the block face would be required to be broken up somewhat. An example is on the left, where you have just a straight street going through. In my experience, those things become drag strips when kids get home from school. But having an open space or having a little bit of flexibility in the street design helps provide some traffic calming, some slowing, and having the open spaces provides for a gap for walkers and for folks to make it through the neighborhood. The density calculation calculates the net density versus the gross. That's, again, referral to taking out half of that open space. And the staff recommends approval of the version that the Planning Commission approved. When it comes to you for a vote, this will be our recommendation. And the summary at the bottom, yes, sir. Establishing the 70-foot minimum lot width, 95 square foot minimum lot area for 51% of the lots. Up to 49% of the lots can be smaller at 50 foot wide minimum and 7,000 square foot minimum lot area. And there's more flexibility in varying lot types.
It's a little confusion when you say that 70-foot minimum lot width, but actually,
you're right.
You can get smaller lots, but you bring that point out first, so that's the point. Everybody thinks it's a 70-foot
They just
lot.
need to read another line or two.
Yeah. Well, I know, but they don't. I don't.
We're trying to give them relief after the first reading.
I know. That's understand. That's just a comment.
I get you. No, I understand. We might be able to work on the neurolinguistics of it.
That concludes the presentation on this topic.
Yes, sir. If there's no other questions.
At this point, this is scheduled to go on the next council agenda. Unless council, you can either vote it up or down, or you can send it, we can do nothing, or you can send it back to the Planning Commission. I know we can't vote here, but you can take recommendations. Any ideas?
I would just send the council and let us vote on it. And if we want to make amendments, we'll send it back to the Planning Commission, because we can't do anything else here.
Okay.
I do have I beg your pardon, sir. May I? I have on my list of things to research when I go back to the office is to take the areas south of Highway 5 out of the option for a cluster overlay and to investigate if there's a way to fairly do that. Is that still going forward, something you'd like for me to look into?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so.
I'm concerned, I would like, you have a drawing there with 5,000 or whatever, 50-foot with 70-foot lots, you got a cluster. I would like to know what the actual density would be going to 12,000 square foot.
Sure.
On a,
Yep.
Cause I can tell you it's 1.3 to 1.4.
It's
but you
50 by 140 for the smaller lots and 70 by 135 for the bigger lots.
Yeah, there'll be no more houses.
So this is scheduled for scheduled for the council agenda for February 26th, I believe, 27th.
All right. Everybody happy with that? Okay.
Thank you.
I do have one piece of information I'd like is, I've asked for it before, what's the lot sizes in the surrounding areas? What's the minimum lot sizes?
Oh, in the other zones? Okay.
Like in Union County
In
or
other counties.
Oh, in other counties. Oh, I see.
Or York
Okay.
County or whatever.
So for a similar zone, what are their minimum lot sizes?
Or,
Got it.
we see that around us. I just wanted to know what they're doing, because whatever they're doing, if it's a larger lot size, they are still booming. If it's a smaller lot size, they're still booming too.
The only reference I know off the top of my head is Horry County, and I can tell you that, but
I don't consider that a neighborhood.
gotcha.
I would say specifically looking at Marvin would be a great area to look at, because there's development going on there, and I think their lot size requirements are different. And then Waxhaw, Weddington are all different communities that I think we can look at.
Can do.
Mr. Blackman, Mr. Carnes, any final thoughts from you, either one?
None for me.
Okay. All right, this will be on the 27th agenda. Thank you, Ms. Harden.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Apologize for interrupting you a couple times. Just throw something at me. My wife does.
Well, then how would you
All
know?
right,
Never mind.
Stay right where you at. We're going to have a follow-up discussion on amending the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO, and policy changes regarding billboards. Ms. Allison Harden, Interim Planning Director.
Yes, sir. This is our research regarding potential billboards on county property. I do want to mention the disclaimer that the following information is not legal advice. It should supplement information received from the county attorneys, which are at the dais and available. If you need questions answered, they'll be able to tell you whether they can answer it here or answer it in executive session. So the proposal was billboards on county property. The county was approached by a local billboard representative regarding using county-owned land on Highway 521 for the sole purpose of erecting digital billboards. Two specific sites included in that request were the Indian Land Recreational Center and Walnut Creek EMS Station. For site suitability, on the first run, the staff looked at the properties and noted that the county property wasn't zoned for billboards and that billboards are not allowed in the highway corridor overlay zone that sits on 521 and on other areas of the county. So we did an evaluation and we looked at all the applicable laws and codes, federal, state, and local, to find out where we stand on making this kind of thing happen. So for federal laws was the Highway Beautification Act of 1965. It covers federally owned primary highways. 521 is a primary highway, and so it does count. So all the rules of the Highway Beautification Act, including the availability of billboards, is covered there. Then we go to the state laws, the Highway Advertising Control Act. This is the next level. So once you get past the federal, you get to the state level. And that act states that a reasonable use of property for outdoor advertising to the public is desirable. However, it will be regulated for the following purposes, and it includes to limit distractions, to increase beautification of the area, to promote safety, convenience, enjoyment of travel, to provide some prosperity, economic well-being, and enhance natural scenic areas. With the Highway Advertising Control Act, it says that outdoor advertising signs must not be erected except under the following 9 conditions. And you can see the 9 conditions there Some of them don't relate to billboards directly, like number 9 says signs less than 32 square feet for a farmer's market. That's definitely not a billboard. However, there are some of those sections where it says that the property has to be zoned industrial or commercial, and that is something where I would encourage you to talk to your legal counsel on that issues, because we want to make sure that one of those 9 issues can be met in order to allow discussion to go forward. With the local codes, billboards and off-premises are allowed in the county. They're limited at light industrial and high industrial zones. The exception for that are properties that are in the highway highway corridor overlay zone. So on the screen, you see the counting on purple, the zones that are HI and LI that are available for billboards. We counted up 288 lots, 233 lots, and then took out about 20 that were in the highway commercial overlay or highway corridor overlay. The county properties are zoned differently. They're not zoned for billboards. County properties are zoned INS, and the highway corridor doesn't allow billboards. So there's conflict in the local rules to allow the billboards on those properties. So in order to resolve that, we would have to do something else. One resolution option is to rezone the properties from INS to LI or HI, which would allow for the billboard. If we do that, then we're taking an action in opposite of the comprehensive plan's recommendation, which is something you have to consider when you're looking at rezonings. If it's out of sync with the comp plan also has to be changed. And in addition, the INS zone was created specifically for county properties to allow for educational, religious, recreation, and government uses to continue in those properties. So the INS is paramount. You could also remove the highway corridor overlay, but then that would allow for properties to be redeveloped out of context and out of situation with the current land use patterns on 521. And it would not be alone enough to remove the highway corridor, or you'd still have to rezone. So impacts of those actions, we may lose highway funds. The highway corridor overlay zone and the laws that are along 521, in part, some of them are there because we get highway funds for that road. It would open up the properties to industrial uses because you'd have to rezone that to industrial, and those are not intended for that, those areas on 521. Might open up a spot zoning challenge due to the incompatibility of an INS, industrial site with the surrounding areas. It may create non-conforming lots and or uses, which would then be unusable. Other applicants, if you rezone it, other applicants could petition to use the county line for industrial business endeavors. You would not be able to say it's just zoned for billboards. It would create a competition with the private sector, and it would create a precedent that would be very difficult to reverse. The other things we would need to do, if you're interested in proceeding after all of that, we'd need to create a way to have a franchise agreement ordinance, to create landlord agreements to allow the county to rent property in competition with other commercial landowners, and have a taxing structure. We'd have to have fair use policy as an bid process, because once the property was available to commercial uses or industrial uses, we'd have to have an open bid process, and we can't guarantee that the person that gets the highest bid is the billboard contractor. And then there's risk management issues that we can talk about further if you'd like. But billboard-specific issues, the county is not eligible or able, not just eligible, and just not able to regulate content. Once an electric billboard is up, if the Church of Worshiping Pigs wants to put up a sign, they get to put up a sign. If someone wants to say that one of you as the chair, as the council folk are not doing a good job and they want to say things about you that's protected under free speech, they can do that, and then it would be on county property. We wouldn't be able to stop that. So that's one of the concerns in particular. Digital billboards, in addition, are larger than the billboards that are allowed in our code currently. Digital billboards tend to be 400 square feet or more. They also have stronger and bigger support structures, because they're supporting not just the typical framework and artwork on a static billboard. They're holding up electronics, they're holding up thousands of LEDs, and they're holding up the timing mechanisms that go with that. So lighting and glare issues are also a consideration. They are required to dim by 90% at dusk, and can bring that back up at 90% at dawn. But during one of the public hearings I've been at, the the signage folks said, well, we have to get as high as we can in the daylight because we have to outburn the sun. Because when the sun burns into a digital light, you can't really see the light, so it has to be brighter than the sun in order to convey the message. And then if the lease request being 99 years, that's extremely long. I'm sure I won't be here to help out. I apologize for that. I'd like to try. But, and if this all goes forward, you'll have to have an open bidding request. So to reiterate, places in the county where billboards are currently allowed exist. To move forward with this, you'd have many challenges, legal and other.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Being from Horry County, I think that's probably the billboard capital of the world.
Could be.
The what putting them on institutional property really doesn't make a lot of sense. And there are very few industrial properties. Are any like billboards on commercial type properties? Is that something or not something, or?
If they are, it is something that was done decades ago, because in the mid-2000s, both the county and the city went through an amortization program looking for the ability to tone down the billboard noise in the area, and went through the court case, did an amortization period of 7 years, then went through court cases again, and over time, the ones that remained were the ones that were on the federally regulated highways. The Highway Beautification Act were the ones that had to stay. The rest of them had other issues or were remained. The only way that the city of Myrtle Beach got some of the billboards removed was to swap them out. But the location where they went still had to stay on those regulated highways. The state law requires the property to be either zoned industrial or commercial. So those two zones are the two that the state would say this is an approved area for a billboard. So commercial is an option. But there are still a lot of other things. It's not the only thing that makes a difference.
I think my question was that of Steve's. Is it possible to have it on commercial property if that's the requirement of the ones that are requesting the billboard? Is that possible?
It's possible under state law requires it. To make it possible in Lancaster County, you would have to change the code where the billboards are allowed to allow the billboards on commercial lots, because right now it's not allowed there. In addition, you'd have to run that code switch through the State Department of Transportation, because anything that is being changed in the transportation corridors has to go through them and their review as well.
As we're going through these UDO amendments, is it possible to create a zoning district that is commercial that would be a subset that allows for billboards?
It could be, however, there is a specific language in the state law that indicates that might not be the best idea, but I'd leave that to your legal counsel to answer.
If you put these, have a separated 2 miles apart or something, 2.5 miles, I mean, you could do, that would keep you from having so many. If you had space them out, if you had a couple up through there, you wouldn't have as many. You know, if you put put miles in there, or if it's 2 or 2.5 or 3, whatever you come up with, and that would limit what could go in.
True. However, on 521 in particular, you still have the highway corridor overlay zone that's tied to a lot of the federal funding, and you'd have to change and or remove that. And to do so, you have to go through the DOT and get that reviewed. And by doing so, it might impact our ability to receive funds on that road. In addition, there would have to be the property that you have, that the county has, not you, sorry, but that the county owns on that, in that corridor, which is what we were asked to review, is neither zone commercial or industrial. So if there was a commercial entity that is elsewhere on 521, without the highway commercial overlay regulations, I'd have to look at, no, excuse me, the zoning would have to change first to allow commercial uses to have the billboard. Then the highway commercial, or the highway corridor overlay would have to be amended and go through the state DOT review and possibly put us at risk for losing funds. And then there'd have to be site selection and regulations, because as of right now, we don't have regulations that allow for the size of a digital billboard. We allow for 150 square foot billboards, and that digital billboard's much bigger.
Mr. Carnes, Mr. Blackman?
Did they hear you?
Mr. Carnes? Mr. Blackman? Any comments, suggestions?
Yeah, I don't see where we need to be changing the regulations to try to encourage to get the billboard, especially not on county property. And if we open it up, then we're going to have to open it up for everybody, because we can't just do it for one piece of property.
Mr. Blackman, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute just a little while ago. You know, as I look through this, I'm now fuzzy about whether or not. I mean, none of us want to see a bunch of billboards up and down 521. You know, to have a limited number is acceptable, but how do we limit that number is I think is a major question. And so I'm sort of confused over why we can't put it on institutional. Is it just because state law says we can't? It's got to be commercial only, or, you know.
Commercial or institutional, industrial. The state law says that the land has to be zoned commercial or industrial, and we start from there and then go forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
No other comments right now.
Mr. Crenshaw, I told him I'd allow him to speak. Would you'd like to say something?
If I was operating that sign, I wouldn't put anybody's image up there and make fun of all y'all, just to let y'all know, first off. Just wanted to mention that first. As he passes out the exhibits that we have here, I'd just first like to address that, you know, I know the makeup of this board is different than it was previously, but I think y'all tasked administrator and attorneys and on a 5-2 vote earlier to how this proposal, to come back to tell us how it could work. First of all, you know, the way no disrespect to Miss Allison here, but you can see from the overtones and everything that's in here is how I've been in business for 43 years. And you can see by the tone of all this is how we can't do it. And you know, we came to y'all with a idea that it would be a win-win situation for both parties. I think the task that y'all tasked planning and council and legal to do, first of all, wasn't done. All this tells you is how it can't be done, and that may be the wishes of the board. But
To start off with, I'd like to address we're not saying that the county should zone their property industrial. It was just an idea. It was just a mere suggestion that this could work. And this was a vehicle that, one, that y'all could obtain property in the Beaufort area for fire and EMS development, which I think would be a great option to you. By no means that this is going to, this was just a mere tool that we was trying to do. Suggest to y'all to do this. If that's not what you want, because we was hoping that, of course you don't want a bunch of billboards up and down the road, but as you can see the map that she lays out here, that I think there's one location on here on the 521 corridor that is even zoned industrial. So you're again, as we said, Mr. Louise wasn't privy to this, but there's only one operator in this area that's there now that has a monopoly on this business. Nobody else can even compete with them. And we have two of the largest clients that's come to us, and that would be Founders and Comporium, that want some means of advertising. We all know what Founders and Comporium means to this county and what they do in far of giving back to the county. So there are two that's for that. Now I'd like to kind of point out some things. So that the idea that we come to you with this our proposal, we're kind of been addressed as kind of the villains, that you're just doing it for us, or it was just merely an idea that maybe this is a way that we could go to approach and limit, and at the same time, council would get a good property, not any different than any development deal you already do now. Y'all currently do. And also, when she starts, I'd like to talk about the federal law stuff. As y'all see there, that I give you out exhibit from Mr. Keith Melvin, CPM. He is the head of SCDOT outdoor advertising. The rules that she speaks to and the rules that she goes by, I can promise you that you got to go by them rules. Billboards are still alive and well and are still allowed, and they're allowed up and down the interstate now currently, and we have not too long have the privilege of getting one on the interstate. If you get permitted by the state, you're gonna fall under the state and federal guidelines, and you're not gonna lose your funds. This is just a scare tactic that they use, or telling you the possibility of you gonna lose it. And if you look here, Mr. Melvin says in his email that y'all can change this to institutional, and they will allow it with the things that's there. So it can be done if you want to do it. I ain't saying this is the way what you want to do. I'm just telling you, this is, it says that they can't. He says you can, and y'all can further look at that. That also applies to the Highway Advertising Control Act. I promise you, the state ain't gonna permit something if they gonna lose federal funds too. So they all about this, and this can happen on state road. I went 20 years to get this. It took me 20 years to get the permit on the state level on the billboard we have currently on the interstate. So if the state permits it, rest assured that you won't have any liability from moving forward from the county as far as losing funds. Local codes, yeah, we all agree that it's zoned out basically right now on the 521 corridor. There's only one person that got it, and you can't. Hey, if you don't want to do the proposal that we have, we're all for opening it for commercial. But there you're going to open up a different can of worms. So, you know, I don't want to paint y'all as the villains. I don't want to put y'all in a bad situation, but I don't want to be painted as a villain either. And the way these proposals, the way this presentation here presents is, again, it's how we can't do nothing. If two parties want to do something, I got to believe there's a way that you can go about trying to achieve to do it. And secondly, on the doing it for just us or doing it sole sourcing, you know, our legal team has done some research, and if you can see that, it's from Morton Getty Law Firm as our legal team, and we presented to Mr. DuBose where the procurement process could not fall under this process. I don't know if he shared that with y'all or not, but I want to share that with y'all now. If you're worried about the procurement process and the sole source of it, then I would challenge, or not challenge, I would ask that at least if you want to move this project forward in some capacity, that we have the ability at least for our legal team and y'all's legal team and staff to be able to come up with a proposal that'll work for all of us. So them two issues on the federal funds and sole sourcing and you know, and coming up, here's another example. You know, you're talking about having to come up with legal. Let me see how they put this.
Mr. Crenshaw, could give you a couple more minutes to go on and wrap it up. I appreciate it.
All right. You know, your franchise agreements, your landlord agreements, and all that. You know, that ain't in that. It's there again. It's not going to be any different than how y'all going to go over here on the industrial part and you're worried about being in business with a public or competing against private landowners. You're going to do the same thing over here on your industrial part. The county has industrial land. You're going to be competing with. If I'm a private developer, you're going to be competing. You're going to be competing against private land. So, you know, you're doing it over there, so you should be able to do it, you know, in this comment. And that's one already. I think that's, I mean, if you got any questions, like I said, we'll answer anything you.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Hal, now originally you had requested or wanted the billboard on county property.
Correct.
So are you saying now that was just a suggestion that it could easily be placed on commercial industrial?
Yeah.
But still some of the zoning and regulation will have to be complied with?
We're looking for, that's correct. That was just one, we're looking for a path to be able to compete somehow or another that allows it. And right now it don't allow it. It was just a vehicle or a tool that we thought that one may limit the number of boards that you have, and two, it may be a good piece of property for a future, you know, fire department, EMS out there in the county. You know, that's.
Take that off the table.
Take it off the table. As far as I'm concerned, just take it off. You can take that off the table, but give us a path that we can go out there and buy a piece of. We go buy a piece of commercial property. If you want to open it up commercial, let's do it.
And I don't know that. I think that question will be decided through our planning department along with our legal department. Because, see, we were under the impression, at least I was, that you wanted it at a certain location on county property.
That was the original request, knowingly that you didn't want to open it up for all commercial uses, because if you want to open up for all commercial use like the rest of the state got, because the state says industrial and commercial. So if you wanted to do that, that opens it up even further. That's fine with us. Give us a path. We're just looking for a path forward where we can go and do this. But you don't, there's one piece of property that I know that is zone industrial on 521. And that's right there at the City of Lights. Across from it is, you go into an industrial park back there. And in that is very limited, I don't know, 100 foot, 150 foot, or whatever they got there. They got a substation, electric substation that's right there. Electric substation. So you couldn't if you put a billboard up there, you couldn't read it. And so, I mean, if you can't read it, ain't no use in putting it up. So that's the only, you can look at the purple dots that she drove out there.
I'm just saying that either way, we're gonna have, if we move forward, we'll have to rezone some property somewhere.
Something's got to change if you want to move forward. If the wish is for you to move property, that we just asking to be able to compete and be able to get a chance. You got a monopoly right now, and that just ain't fair. Even the biggest employers or biggest benefit of this county is looking, to.
As I said, now you know we as council will have to listen to our legal advisors and our planning. So I can't say one way or the other. It's just that now I'm thinking I've got to think differently from what I was thinking originally, because I was thinking you said county property.
We did. That was, like I said, that was just a proposal. It was just an idea to thought that it'd be a pathway forward for y'all to achieve, both parties to achieve what they was, and I thought maybe wanted.
And I think that's the biggest frustration for us was when we, from the beginning, when we came and he spoke at the committee at whole and I made my speech, and y'all voted 5-2 to give it to planning and legal to give us a pathway to do something. But all we have seen, no offense, she's been here for a week and a half and she might have not been privy to that. And all we've seen is the same thing that you presented before. There's no, all we're doing is going backwards instead of going forward and giving us an opportunity to either say yes or no. I think that's the biggest frustration for us. Is it, do we want to do this and make it a possibility for, to have advertising for?
It may put us in the same position we're in now, because those questions has not been answered to this point because you've changed.
Yeah.
But listen to me now. Personally, if I could make it happen, I would, but I can't. I represent the county.
Agreed.
Go with whatever our legal team and our planning department tell us. But I'm sure if it's possible, we could, but I'm not saying that it's possible. I'm just saying I feel you have. I do. I do understand.
And I had a thought, but I lost it.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
One thing that I think when we think about billboards, as we think about other things that are going in the Indian Land area or any area, even with the building of houses down our way, which may or may not bring in new retail. Well, it comes back to, are we pro-business? And, of course, I am, because I'm a businessman. Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I believe you're pro-business because you're a businessman. And billboards are a way to advertise and a way for businesses to generate more revenue. And, of course, as council members and as government officials, we love the idea of increased sales tax in our county because we have our local option sales taxes that are coming to us from the sales tax. And so as we promote retail trade, we also increase revenues for this county. And that takes a burden off of our property tax general fund revenues because we have an alternative source of revenue. So I personally like the idea of having a couple of billboards. How we go about it and skin that cat is up for debate, and I think we need to be open-minded. And as we go along with the idea of a billboard or two in the area, these things are very dynamic. I mean, the one that's already up there is very dynamic in my mind, colorful, interesting to look at versus a stagnant, old-timey billboard on the interstate. And if we want to talk about the beautification of Indian land as part of this argument, there's no proposal to put a billboard in anybody's driveway. There's no proposal to put a billboard in the entranceway to a neighborhood. The proposals that we're hearing and being requested is to put it in a commercial corridor area where it is more of a natural fit. And if we want to beautify Indian land, let's take down the power poles and all the power lines up that way, because that, to me, is a huge distraction for that area, because that area is going to boom. It's going to continue to boom. We've got to control it. But that is to me, the big distraction of our area, and what we need to do to make it better is to do something about our power line infrastructure and our telephone and internet and fiber optic that we have up that way. So I think the first issue we got to look at, are we pro-business or are we not pro-business? That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Graham.
Well, I think it's very clear that the people of Indian land do not want billboards on 521. So if this council wants to ram them down our throat, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Graham.
One more comment. I know we've mentioned this before about the public service announcements that we are providing, we're offering here, which is invaluable. You know, the amount of it costs to be on a sign is, advertising is expensive in any avenue. So that should be invaluable to the county as well. As you can see, there was problems with the Indian Land Recreation for signups over there because the kids didn't know when to sign up. So if Indian Land had a sign for their kids, they might would have more signups. So that's just a thought process of giving a invaluable piece of information to the county or EMS or Amber Alerts. We done went through all this before, but I felt like it should be reiterated for people that were not privy to that.
And that was part of the original proposal with the county and the county-owned property as well. Is when we done that, we failed to mention that this time, but I'm sorry Mr. Louise didn't get to hear that, but I know he's aware of it, and I don't know that everybody in Indian land is against.
I would say if you had gone, I put it out as a survey, and it was 98% against. Yes.
Well, we'll see on that.
We will see on that.
Point out that Mr. Luis is still joining us via phone.
Who is?
Mr. Luis.
Oh, okay. All right. I appreciate it.
He's trying to say something.
Go ahead.
Time to start over.
Start over, Mr. Luis.
I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. Try that.
I am not necessarily opposed to it. I'm still in the process of understanding what all the issues are and trying to make a decision and trying to, like I said, understand what the risks are. I understand, the presentation today, but to Mr. Crenshaw's point, is there an opportunity where we can figure something out?
I think he said, to Mr. Crenshaw's point, to see if we can figure something out. I think that's what he said at the end.
He wants to understand the risks and.
Say it again, Mr. Louise, you want to understand the risks and what?
Understand the risks and figure out kind of where all the information is leading us and figure out a position that maybe is mutually beneficial for everyone and that can make something work. Because to Mr. Blackman's point, we are a business-friendly county. That's what we're trying to do with our economic development. And this is an opportunity to advertise for those businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
We appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Carnes.
just like to raise the concern of, if we open this Pandora's box, we don't do this where more than one billboard company has the opportunity to put a billboard up there. I think we're just backing ourselves into a legal quagmire if we're going to do something like this, then we probably need to designate a certain number of properties that they can go on and have a system where we set up a license to where they can get one, and then it's basically whoever pays the highest bid gets the licenses, because I don't see where we can do this just for one company.
Well,
As it sits right now, only one company can do it.
yeah, you say that's a great point. You talk about us, we're doing it for just one company, but you got one company now that has that, and that's what we're trying to get. But yeah, you might open the Pandora's box. That's why we give you the tool to try to do what we suggested, and it may not open the Pandora's box.
We do have one company, but we have to realize that company had that billboard there for years, and they were grandfathered in. We didn't make them tear the billboard down. We didn't allow them to put any more in as well.
All right. And I would suggest is if you go back and look at your UDO now, even though he was grandfathered in, your UDO states that when it changed, it still would have to come down. I don't want to go down that path, but your UDO, as it currently states, he's out of what do you call a sign? It's non-conforming based off of what your UDO says right now. What? No, that's not what your UDO says. If you go back and read that UDO, it says from the time it changes, you got a certain amount of time, regardless. That's what the UDO says.
All right, we need to be wrapping up this conversation one way or the other. We appreciate it, Mr. Crenshaw. So I'm looking for direction. I know how Mr. Graham feels about where to go from here. Mr. Marstall, would you like to comment?
Now, just like last time, there was indication from a consensus of council to go forward with a specific proposal. No one was made out to be a villain, and this was not proposed to be an open-ended proposal. It was very specific to county property and how that might be made available. That was the direction that council had given to staff. That is the direction that we've come back with today. And so we have outlined there are several legal pitfalls for you all. I don't have a solution or a path forward based upon what we've seen from legal counsel to do this. If I would suggest if there is another proposal to come forward, not involving county property, but understanding where it's currently zoned, we've outlined that where that's currently zoned. It may not be the most high volume, high visible locations in the county, but we do allow billboards in this county. And so we do have avenues for that to happen. If there is some other way to make it along certain corridors or in commercial areas or whatever, again, I don't know what that proposal would look like, but what we're saying now is that to do anything in the current corridors, it would take at least 8 actions of changing different zonings, ordinances, overlays, and that's just the initial part of it. And so I would suggest that if there's a new proposal where it's currently allowed or some other tweaking, but again, you still have the same hurdles if you're looking for along major corridors. And so the legal advice for along the corridors is that there's no way to change the zoning on county property, but if someone comes with a proposal to do it to industrial, there's a way to do that.
Well, the one thing that sticks out to me right off is the requirement on the federal highways or whatever. And I think, Ms. Howe, you said it took 20 years to get permits. Is there any way that before we do anything that we could get a ruling from DOT one way or the other on? And I'm talking about a legal brief from a lawyer. I don't
that
think that,
conversation.
I mean, that's that Lancaster would be qualified, that it wouldn't hurt, that we would need a letter saying, before we even considered it, that we would not jeopardize highway funding. I mean, I think that's a starting point. And then, you know, is that make sense, or do you want to?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Because, I mean, there's not unanimous consent, you know, one way or the other. That's obvious. But any suggestions?
Go ahead, Bill. I'm good with looking at, you know, from DOT exactly what we can and cannot do, because if we do move forward, we need to know what's going on. If we don't move forward, we also need to know why we made that decision.
Me too, as far as the DOT, but, you know, I think we need to look at the possibility of commercial. I mean, we looked at this other way that don't seem to be going to work with the county property or that land or whatever, but if just put something on commercial, we just need to give him some direction. We need of what he can do and, you know, what we can do, and, you know, let's bring it up and get it done. I mean, or whatever we're doing.
Maybe the first thing is,
Information, and I'm not, I haven't got all the information I wanted. Like I say, a lot of this information that we've got is not a lot what I was looking for. A lot of it is what I seen before of not what we can do, but not what, you know, what we can't do here. So I would like to see a little more direction toward maybe it's looking at commercial just to see if there's any possibilities there, and limit them instead of us having so many that let's, like I say, put some miles in there, you know, 2.5, 3 miles between them, and you ain't gonna have but 2 or 3 up through there. So you're not gonna have a bunch going on if you put that's one stipulation we can do as council.
You know, we said areas, commercial and industrial, and it's not many areas like that. Can you give us specific locations on those areas that are zoned?
I think it's hard.
She did, but I'm talking about, looking at a map, I'm talking about next to what street locations. I know it was on the map, but I'm not familiar with any land, so I want to know specific areas.
but you can always rezone something to those. I think that, I mean, I've been pretty clear that I'm not in favor of billboards on 521. I mean, that's my position, and that's going to be my position. So all the work that you're doing is not going to change my mind.
I just want to know the areas that are already zoned. That's all I'm asking for right now.
Yes, we took the map and we can put more detail to that.
Anything else?
That's all I want.
All right. So
We'll bring back you some of that information.
can we have when will you think you could do a follow-up?
We can do a follow-up with probably by the next council meeting, February 27th.
All right. We will notify you, Mr. Crenshaw.
Will it be information, discussion, and action item, or will it be just for discussion?
Probably,
Information only, I think.
yeah, information only that we can provide in your packet, but if we need to have an executive session about some of it, we'll do that as well.
Anything would have to go through the planning commission and all that.
Yeah. I just want to know where we're going with it.
All right. Let's try to finish up. Follow up on amending the Unified Development Ordinance regarding minimum parking standards. Ms. Harden, this is a concern brought up by our council member, Mr. Blackman. So he will probably be chiming in on this one.
Wake up, Alan.
This is a discussion about the typical parking lot stall.
I'm wide awake.
The typical parking lot stall, 18 feet 6 inches long and 8 foot 6 inches wide. The length may decrease when directly against a curb down to 17 feet. And the typical drive aisle in the code is 23 feet wide. With angled parking, the drive aisle widths may decrease because of the way that the cars move in and out of the property. They don't need as much space, and individual stall length and width must increase. So how do we compare? We looked at different communities around us, Waxhaw, Union County, York County, Fort Mill, and Lancaster County. We came out kind of in the middle. York County has the highest end with a minimum length feet of 20 feet. The 18-foot was shared by Waxhaw and Fort Mill. We're 18.5. For the width, we're kind of in the middle. We've got 8.5 to 9 feet in the general communities around. So how does that rank to existing vehicles? Staff took a look at some random vehicles, and to give you an idea of what cars, what their lengths are and what their widths are. 15 feet is a typical for a 4Runner, RAV, a Jeep Cherokee, even a Prius. But you get into the Ford F-150 at 19 feet and the Chevy Silverado 2500 at 20 feet. So that only your very larger trucks would be challenged in those parking spaces. The width of these cars are typically 6 foot, except for the Prius, which is just under 6 feet. And again, the Chevy Silverado comes out at top at 6'10". For an example of a parking area, the Heath Springs Soccer Complex is within the town of Heath Springs and was developed under the regulations of the town's UDO, not under the county's UDO. In the Heath Springs Soccer Complex, the typical stall is 8 foot long by 9 foot wide, but up to 20% of the parking on the parking lot may be compact. And compact lots, compact sizes are 16 feet long by 8 foot wide. If you go back to here, you can see that that would absolutely fit the Prius. Might be a squeeze on the Cherokee. The RAV4 would be able to fit, but the larger vehicles would not. So in the Heath Springs Soccer Complex, 20% of those parking lot spaces could be compact. And then the typical drive aisle is 24 feet wide on that. For quantity of spaces, the number of required stalls is specific to different uses. General commercial is 1 space for every 200 square foot of selling space. Recreational facility is the same kind of measurement. For a restaurant, it's 1 per 75 feet of indoor seating area, 1 per 3 occupants of outdoor seating area. Dance floor, standing room only, food and beverage areas, and et cetera. When we talk about maximum parking, we say that there's a minimum parking for your development, and then the maximum is twice that. So if you have a piece of property that is 1,000 square feet, you're required 1 per 250 square feet. That's 4 parking spaces. The maximum you could install would be 8. That's intended to mitigate increased runoff, water pollution, and heat islands that result from the asphalt. That is the overview of our parking situation.
Mr. Blackman?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Blackman.
Okay, so my biggest thing was, and still is, that our minimum parking requirement is just too small. And if anybody will lay out some Coke cans and try to park a car with those dimensions, you'll find it's hard to park with that minimum standard. And it's not necessarily easy to park with the larger standard either. And because I saw a little bump up in the recreational rec field parking lot, that's what made me start getting out with a tape measure and realizing that, well, shoot, these spaces are way too small. So I'm just advocating doing away with that minimum standard. And, you know, if council doesn't agree, that's fine. The only other point that I've got about parking is when we actually went and redid the number of spaces needed for various uses, number of parking spaces required for a place of assembly, a number of parking places required maybe for office space. The only problem I have with those requirements is when we had that one development that came to us with garden homes, we had 1 parking space per resident, and there is no way that is adequate. we need to have, and reserve parking too. If we're going to say, okay, well, let's have one parking space per cottage, and then we'll make the developer have one parking space in a remote parking, well, then we need to have some distances of what remote parking really is, because we don't want it to be a half mile away. So those were my issues with parking and our regulations at this point. And understand this too, that it's at the rec center, and maybe at other centers, people come in with big pickup trucks pulling a trailer. These guys that cut grass in the summertime, they come to see their kids play. They've just finished up doing their workout in the field. They pull right up, take about 4 or 5 spaces. So sometimes when you look at the number of spaces needed, we need to factor in, is it a rural area or is it an urban area where we have that kind of parking needs too? That's my soapbox.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Carnes.
I would question whether we want to get rid of the minimum or whether we want to increase the minimum, because if we get rid of it, that means somebody could put whatever size they wanted to put in there. But if we up the minimum, change the width or length, whatever we need to do, then that should become the new standard.
Brian.
Yes,
Brian,
sir.
we still have a standard. If we did, and listen, I think you've got good merit there, and y'all may not agree with me totally, but we've already got a larger standard, and if we did away with the minimum, then that means everybody got to comply with the larger standard. But if that larger standard seems a little bit too egregious for council, maybe we just up the minimum standard, I think, kind of as you were suggesting. So I'm open for anything, and it's just whatever this council thinks is best for the convenience of parking, because me personally, if it's a crowded parking lot and it's a business, I generally won't visit that business, and I think in a lot of ways we might be doing our businesses a favor by making sure they don't come in and cramp a bunch of cars together. But yeah, I think you got a good alternative solution if people don't agree with me.
Yeah, I would.
Go ahead, Mr. Carnes.
I would say that's what we need to do, is up the minimum standard and then go from there.
I think we have several different parking issues that the county needs to or will be looking at. Can we do all? If there's more than one change, can we kind of do it all in one ordinance? That'd be preferred.
That'd be preferred.
And then one more comment. I would like some comments from our stormwater people, because when you start making parking lots bigger, when you get more runoff, you are creating more of a flooding hazard. And when you get in a parking lot with 300 or 400, 500 parking places, and you start adding 2 foot to every aisle, I would like some professional advice on the impacts of our stormwater.
I mean, we're looking at 2 big customers coming with big parking lots.
Ms. Harden, even with upping the minimum standards, we're still going to need to have a percentage of the minimum and all the way to the maximum, right? Regardless if we up it, we still going to have the percentage of each size, right?
Regardless of the size of the stall, there will still be a number of lots per square foot minimum, correct?
Okay.
And when we're talking about changing the size of the parking stall itself, I apologize, Mr. Blackman, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that when you said that you wanted to do away with minimum standards, am I correct in understanding that you did not mean to do away with minimum parking stall size? He's not on the phone anymore?
I think it's the aisle.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm agreeing with Brian, because we won't get rid of it. We'll just up it.
Yeah,
I
if
think that's
you
what-
get rid of the minimum, then anyone can go in with a 15-foot
Yes,
size
yeah.
width or length on the lot. And that would really create a bigger mess.
Okay,
But does it, it won't change the number of parking spaces allowed per business per the UDO. It just makes the parking lot bigger.
Not unless you ask me to come back with something that says that.
And then advance that one slide, please.
Yes,
So
sir.
to see what the what the area folks are doing, to see what you'd want to change it to, I'm not sure what a number, I don't know what to base a new minimum would be or a new recommended would be. You see what the averages are in the area. So if we go to 20, or if it is more the aisle, if you want just larger aisles versus larger stalls.
I'm not trying to cut this discussion short, but I think we're all in agreement that we need to look at this and some other parking issues as far as minimum parking requirement on those, what was it, the townhouses or whatever.
Yeah, and that we've addressed.
And some,
Okay.
on
So look at
several other parking
the minimum parking requirements for small residential units
I think
and look at the minimum stalls,
and the,
cottages.
But that, and that'll only apply to new developments. That won't apply to ones that are already in process.
Right, unless they redevelop.
and there's also some parking issues. So this will not come back for council for probably several months. I don't think. Go ahead.
Quick thing. What opened my eyes on it was the soccer field at Harrisburg, Harrisburg Rec. The original plans was to put extra overflow parking for the school side of it, and they were going to make a sidewalk over there. Well, the school cut it off.
I'm here.
Why? I don't know why. They want us to work together.
They wanted that sidewalk, remember?
That we can't use it.
Oh, the sidewalk issue, yeah. John's been involved with that with the schools. Yeah, he can give you that
Another
answer.
I would just say we have re-engaged the school on that conversation. We had a separate sidewalk issue at Harrisburg, and so we have re-engaged the school to see if there is a desire to continue with that plan. And so there's been a couple of members of the school board that have agreed to hear that conversation.
Good.
We are re-engaging to see.
Well, good.
That would really help that part.
I mean, I thought that was the original intent of putting them right there.
Yeah, it was.
All right.
I have marching orders. I'm ready to go.
And we actually may be able to bring up, depending on the time frame, part of the UDO, if not separate. So we'll put this on the radar for next month or two.
Mr. Blackman, you understand this is, might be several months out. I don't think it's going to, because there's some other parking issues, it'd be better to figure them all out and redo our parking ordinance at one time, if that's all right with you.
Steve, I'm not getting very good reception right now. I mean, I'm not being able to understand what's being said, but I think what you just said was, we'll do this all at one time?
There's several parking issues staff will be working on, and this won't happen in 30 days. It might be 3 to 4 months, because this other stuff needs to be addressed too, and it'll probably be easier to do it all at one time.
The one thing we don't want to do, though, is lump everything together. If we're, I mean, if there's 10 issues, and if council wants to do them all at one time in one meeting in a couple of months, that's fine. But if we know there's one we agree upon or see a solution on, let's get the cottages, cottage homes. That is, that's just common sense beyond measure. And then the other suggestion of mine is not ready to be involved yet, then we vote on it later. But whatever y'all want to do. I brought it up. I've done my due diligence. So if council wants to handle it one way, I'm good with that.
All right, we'll let staff make recommendations on what they want to do. All right, thank you, Mr. Blackman. Any other comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion
Second.
for Mr. Graham, second for Mr. Mosteller. Roll call.
Terry Grant. Charlie McGriff. Bill Mosteller.
Approved.
Jose Luis.
Approved.
Steve Harper.
Approve.
Alan Wagner.
Approve?
Rod Carr.
Approved.
We have unanimous approval to adjourn. This meeting workshop is adjourned.
Hey, Jerry, hope you feel better.